two, three, four, five members, so that we, six, I guess. Who am I missing? Oh, I have eight. We got eight? Eight.
And the meeting is being recorded.
Okay, meeting's being recorded. So Jim, Donna, Jeff, Bob, no, Phil.
I'm alternate, so I don't know if that has any bearing. I'm supposed to be the alternate for Phil that I needed to make a quorum, so I wanted to make sure I was here.
Yeah, well, we don't, I think, I'm also not sure what our quorum is now, because are we in between last year's members and this coming year's members?
We still have the same number of members appointed as we did last year.
So that's 18.
Yeah, still be sworn in. So quorum is 10 and there's no quorum, so you just can't vote on anything.
Yeah, okay.
Pass over minutes in that case.
Yeah.
So, Michael, do you have to count those who haven't been sworn in? I mean,
Yeah.
there's 18 people, but if they
Yes.
haven't been sworn in, are they really members?
They still, yeah, they still count. They do have to be sworn in. So that's why it's actually, we can move to agenda item number 2. That's why it's really important to make sure you get sworn in so that this committee can still continue to take votes on various things. And so all you have to do is go to the town clerk's office. They'll swear you in. And if you could take, and when you do that, your certificate of open meeting law or receipt of open meeting law materials, and give that to the town clerk. I sent that out in a previous email, but if you need me to resend it, just reach out to me and I'll resend it. And then the last thing is that there's an annual ethics training that we all have to do as appointed committee members. So if you did it last year, it's a very quick, it's like a 15-minute read of conflict of interest, and you just scroll through it and hit the checkbox at the end saying that you read it and understand it, and you don't have to report to me or the town clerk. They have a system that's already tracking that.
All right. So we'll continue with the agenda, but I think the only vote we needed was the approval of the minutes. So we'll put that off to the next meeting, whenever that is. I did read them. I thought they were excellent minutes, but we'll put that off. Do you have any reports on grants or anything you want to do, Michael?
I don't. There are a couple of things that are upcoming with us closing out the fiscal year. Some things are in transition, like our barrier beach management plans we're moving into a different phase. But with the closeout of our CZM grant at the end of the fiscal year, we're regrouping and trying to implement the Municipal Vulnerability Program Fund. So I don't have a lot of program updates right now. I definitely will in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So we're at really the only item on the agenda, which is the progress of the report. And as I described, we've got our report, and we've got the feedback on 3 chapters from the UMD team, Nefeli and Chad, I think primarily. And they had set up a scoring system, because it is important, I think, if we're giving recommendations to the select board, to say this is more important than that. So they have a sense, with limited resources, both financial and human, that of prioritization. And UMD said, this is just a draft. We want your comments on how we're coming up with scores. I don't know. I wanted someone to tell me what disparity is the middle score, because it wasn't intuitive to me what that was. I think
It's an environmental justice,
it's environmental justice.
Yes.
About the
disproportionate impact.
disproportionate.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the framework that the state's climate assessment used in ranking.
Got it. So, and just speaking personally, I think trying to conform this with the state makes a lot of sense, for all kinds of reasons. But Jeff, do you want to, kind of report on how you see, the activity of the committee reports and UMD coming together? And the earlier question I asked, which is you had given us, an outline, that wasn't, that was different than just let's repeat the committee reports. It was a different outline. How that all merges into one? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see the individual reports as they are, or as they're becoming.
Yeah.
Being the base material for writing a chapter that will be in a consistent format, voice, presentation across each of the chapters, right? So we didn't set up a framework for that at the beginning, which is fine, but I think in my head, at least, I have an idea of how that can be done. And I have no problem taking that source material if everybody's happy with what we have and doing that right, and putting it in that format.
Yeah.
Some of the chapters are going to be, condensed. Some might be elaborated a little bit based on, we need some more details on
Yeah.
here and there. But I think in addition to looking at the comments that UMD's provided, the subcommittees, I think we should think of, is everything there that we think should be there, that we want there? Are there other things they could be helping us with? Kind of a wish list of things. So subcommittees could kind of prioritize that. Is everything there that
Yeah.
needs to be there? Or are there things missing? Or are there things that we think we can't do, but maybe they can help with? Just one example in infrastructure. I know everybody's aware of the fragility of the electric power infrastructure in Westport. Well, I tried over the winter interacting with Eversource and National Grid, try and find out what are the resilience. Do they have any maps of the circuits so we know, which circuits could. I got stonewalled by all of that.
Yeah.
Went to their legal and they said,
Yeah.
so need to know basis, so we don't give that out. But maybe they have some way of working with that, or maybe there's other resources or other reports that we could, they could find that would help us with that kind of stuff.
But could we ask them to come up with their own resilience plan for Westport? I mean, because then they would have, so then they wouldn't have to give us secret information,
Yeah.
which they don't want to give to terrorists and stuff.
Yeah.
But at least they could, I know from the Serpent thing, we had a presentation about what they're upgrading based on what they anticipate electrical demand
Yep.
to be, and where these substations will be and where the new power lines will be. We've had that presentation. I don't know. This is Eversource. But I think both of them should be able to respond to that.
Who would ask Eversource for that? And when I say who would ask, I'm thinking what maximizes our chances of getting a response? The select board, the planning board, this committee?
Select board.
Yeah, that was my thing,
Yeah.
representing,
But, so I think that's the only way to get them to respond. You're not going to get them to give you information, but you can get them to give you the meat of their resilience plan. You can tell them what we're concerned about, like on East Beach. What are their plans?
So let me, I think that's a great idea. And to accomplish that, Michael and Dia, would it be possible for you to draft a letter that the select board would send to Eversource asking for a resilience plan that they either already have for Westport or that they could develop, and then get it to a select board meeting? I can't see any reason the select board wouldn't okay that and sign whatever you've written.
Send a copy to Senator Rogers.
Yeah, that's all you gotta do.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I, Paul Schmidt's former aide was Anthony Villieu. I don't know if anybody remembers him, but he now works for Eversource.
Oh,
And he's the public
Liaison.
liaison for Eversource for this area. And so I contacted him about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, and asked him, can we have a meeting with you folks about the utilities that come along East Beach? And we want to see about how to make them more resilient for that area.
So
And he said, okay, I'll get right back to you. And it's been silence
Yeah.
ever since, even though I've tried to contact him.
He probably went from to the only bureaucracy bigger than the State House, and that's Eversource.
So, I mean, so they're aware that we're asking for that kind of information, but so far, it's been silence.
Yeah,
But I mean, so I'm just the person.
yeah. So, Michael, can you get a letter drafted for the select board?
Yeah, we can.
That's that.
Yeah, we can do that. And I just want to echo what Jim and Jeff had said, that I think like when Jeff did, I sat in on the meeting during the winter when he had set that up, and it was really kind of frustrating because they danced around a lot of issues that we were trying to bring up with them. So I do think that there needs to be someone who's got a little bit more political clout who can push them a little bit.
As Phil said, the letter from the select board should CC, among others, Mike Rodericks, and
Sure,
that's,
yeah.
Mike Rodericks will get their attention.
And today, Steve Ouellette.
And
So
Steve
Steve
Ouellette,
Steve
because he was also on the select board, so he has some
Yeah,
connection still with the select board and how the process works in town.
I mean, they may come back with a counter offer, but at least,
Yeah.
you know, it'll get.
And that's just
dialogue.
one example of something I think we really nearly need to get our hands on. And
Yeah.
if the other subcommittees have other high priority items that they just haven't been able to tackle that UMass or somebody else could help with, let's get those identified so that we can put some attention on them.
so, are Nepheli and Chad now working on like the ag and other chapters?
I believe so. The other thing that they had mentioned at our last meeting here was this concept of having a mapping system and being able to do overlays. And I didn't see anything in their progress report about that. So I'm gonna follow up with them
Okay,
on that.
and I can't remember, do we have the historic structures report? Did Wendy get that in?
Yes.
She did. So that means UMD, I know they make reference to it, has that one too to work on. And I agree with you, as I went through it in the infrastructure, I said, well, there's no discussion of elevating roads there. And in the health one, there was no discussion of, do we help? I did see it somewhere, work with the Council on Aging to help finance the acquisition of air conditioning units for income eligible seniors, because the Council on Aging already has a program. So it's a question of how do you build on that? Because the report, I think, mentions that people are reluctant to go to cooling centers. And so you can't address it with just cooling centers. You got to be more realistic. So that gets me, and that if the next thing is to have the committees that have something to react to, that is where UMD has had a chance to go through this. So right now that's 3 committees, but who knows, next week it could be 4 or 5, because they are working pretty quickly on this. If we set a next meeting originally I was thinking September 25th, because that's about 2 months, which is our schedule. But if we want all these committees to meet and it's the middle of summer, does it make sense to put it off a month? The 3rd Thursday in October is October 16th.
I think it does, because you're gonna have trouble getting people together during the summer.
Yeah.
And people have other priorities, so.
So why don't we put down October 16th? Does anyone have a problem with that one? Nepheli, do you know if that's a problem, or Michael with the planning office? October
Time
16th.
Is it, what day of the week?
That's a Thursday.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, we've usually.
Yeah.
And somehow or other, and this is my fault, because I missed a meeting, didn't, realize that tonight's meeting conflicted with offshore wind. So if we get October 16th out there, maybe we'll, make it less likely that there'll be conflicts. All right, and so, Michael or Jeff, you've already sent out to the committee chairs, please do this. So, we can say we discussed it and we still feel the same thing, but you've got until October 16th, so they have a deadline. Yeah, me too. I want to sit in on all of them. And, you want to sit in on all of them. And like, I don't know, the last time the water committee was very active early on, but I don't think they've had a meeting in a long, long time. So it'd be good to get all the committees together. You need to talk to all your members, improve communication flow.
You could submit, we didn't have a fear.
That's what AI is for. You ought to just create an AI persona for your committee and you can really have a dialogue.
The question.
Yeah, yeah.
Line of questioning. I asked, Phil the other day, about and I'm so glad, Michael, that you were able to help clarify something for me, the difference between the hazardous mitigation purpose and the emergency response plan and its purpose. Because I had said to Phil, do we have a plan in town that if this happens, the Board of Health does this, fire does this, that each department has a role to fill during that time? Because I haven't seen that plan. So I just wondered if we have that in place.
The fire department, I forget, they were working on something recently, and I'll follow up with the fire chief to get it for you. I forget what the title of it was. It's kind of like an emergency response plan. I'll
Wasn't it
follow up.
MEMA?
What?
Wasn't it MEMA? MEMA?
No,
Oh.
It might have been something they submitted to MEMA, but I
Mm-mm-mm.
don't remember what it was. But anyway, I'll follow up, and I'll once I get it from the fire chief, I'll send it out to you.
Because I think it's important, like, who's the communication hub? We're all communication. I know state will come in if there's some major disaster, but Texas is really on my mind, right? And who could have planned and prepared for what happened in Texas? I mean, maybe they could have in a different way or alert people, but I just think in our area that I on the Board of Health don't know if something happens as a Board of Health member, what's my role and responsibility in a disaster?
Well, I think
That's really
the
important.
critical issues of communication is there's some coordinating center or something happen that can manage communication between the various agencies and departments. That's been the critical fault line in Texas.
And every department should have that plan, that in the event of a disaster, this is who we communicate with. That's where communications are coming from. The Board of Health is responsible for any health-related issues, working with the Red Cross or whoever. Like, that's that's just something I'm throwing out there. But I would be very helpful to. I just had a caregiver support group and we talked about anticipating when the bad thing happens.
Yeah.
And it's less stressful if you have a plan in place before the bad things happen, even though you don't want it to. And for me, being in the Board of Health, I'd like to know what would we be doing
Yeah,
during
I
a
mean,
disaster?
one of the things you would be doing is having the select board or the town administrator declare an emergency. And then you'd be convening a number of people at an emergency operating center. So figuring out where is the emergency operating center, it's got to have resilience against hurricanes, et cetera, floods. It's got to be located, loss of power,
Right.
and it's got to have really good communications. And it might be a fire station, but you have to know where it is so that you say it's an emergency and a whole bunch of town people come to the one place and they're sitting around a table. So you're dealing with what you talked about, Mike, which is, good communications. And that it's got to be directly connected to MEMA. FEMA, who knows? It probably won't be a FEMA, but it definitely needs to be connected to MEMA. Yeah,
So I may be proved wrong, but I have a high level of confidence that there is a plan there, that the fire chief is the incident commander.
yeah,
And in fact, I even think there's a loose leaf notebook up in the, which I have looked at quite a while ago. So I think it's there. But we should satisfy ourselves that
yeah.
it's, you know, it is what it is.
We need to do a little drill.
Well,
Well, that's the incident commander's decision about how to implement it, okay? Because it becomes like a military operation with, with command, with command structure as to who's doing what. Hmm?
Just
Yeah.
gotta call something out.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. So he's,
Communication.
in this case, he's in charge.
If there is a plan, then that would be great because it means that you throw that plan into the mix in terms of how these things work. As Michael said, hazard mitigation is what you do before and emergency response, what you do after. That's a good way of thinking of it. But all these things have to be basically saying the same stuff. And so if we have the draft of that, we fold that into Jeff and UMD, then we're increasing the fact that all these are connected.
So something like this has happened within the past 12, 14 years. We had a big blizzard back then. And parts of town had no power for 5 or 6 days, maybe 7. And there was no communication. There was no way to get information because all the power lines and the communication
Telephone
lines
yeah.
were down.
Yeah,
Nobody was going around checking on old people. And my mother-in-law was in her house. We moved into her house with her. She wouldn't move. She wouldn't leave. So she sat in a chair in the middle of the living room with about 5 blankets on her all day. And then went to bed with 5, 6, 7 blankets on top of her because there was no heat.
yeah,
She wouldn't let us put a fire in the fireplace because she thought we'd burn the
Yeah.
house down. So, and there was no way to know where to go. Was there some place? All of the hotels were chock-a-block full because you couldn't, everybody was leaving the house and going there. And there was nothing.
yeah,
There should,
yeah,
No, sorry. I just want to share some of the things I've learned through researching for an MVP grant. Basically, for that emergency response plan that's been drafted, there's no communications element. So when I talked with John Resendiz, I think that's how you say his last name, and Valerie Bain, they were saying that they don't have direction from the fire chief, who is the commander in chief or whatever for these emergencies. They don't have a verified plan with him on where will they post the bulletin if they have access, what information are they displaying, and also their backup generator is in the new high school. So when I was talking to Lieutenant Nunes on a separate conversation, he said, oh, the high school could be a great center for like heating or cooling. Then when we talked to the cable people, it was like, okay, we might also be there needing to use that generator. So there's already kind of gaps and mistakes. And an important piece that Lieutenant Nunes shared with me is like in the event of a disaster, while people do need to be checking in on their neighbors, et cetera, it's actually police and fire who are going to be cordoning off places and, acting with, I don't know, whatever they need to do. So even amongst non-fire and emergency people, we have to follow what they're saying. And also, I don't know, it's like we can't create an effort of checking in on your elderly neighbors. It might go against what the fire chief says, basically. Sorry.
I think our TRC report ought to reflect what we know about what's in these plans.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if there
Yeah.
are things we don't know,
Yeah.
those become, to-dos, investigates. I don't want to just kick things down the road, but
Yeah.
You know, we are applying for grants.
Yeah.
To further work on this, and maybe some of that money could be put to answering some of these questions or filling in some of these
Right.
gaps. So if we can get our hands on those plans and review them in whatever committee they think are appropriate for, know what's in them, make sure our report or subcommittee reports reflect what's in them, and if we have questions and there's seem to be gaps, those can become action items.
Mhm. And then part of the communication is how do we communicate with the community?
Right, right.
You know, especially if power is down. So then how are we, so again, if we have something where every home has, this is the disaster plan. That
Yeah.
if we can invest some money in something that's, that says A, B, C, and D
Yeah.
is what will happen if this happens.
Yeah,
That they will know what to do, because one of the things is decreasing people's anxiety, because
Yeah.
that's when things really get bad, when
Yeah.
people get anxious.
Yeah,
And then they get aggressive and, or they, right? So anything we do to allay any kind of anxiety when a disaster happens is in everyone's best interest.
That's a good point. I want to emphasize in this report that this is about community resilience, you know, at the town level, but then also individual resilience,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Because everybody has vulnerabilities in the case of some of these climate events. And there are things that you can do and that we can help them do to prepare. The MVP is doing that with, you know, the lower income and the environmental justice community. Probably talk about that next meeting. But I think that's got to be an important part of the messaging. Is this isn't just what the town department is doing, but you can do it individually and raising awareness of, you know, how you're impacted and what you can do to prepare. Because there aren't a lot of resources available, and there's unlikely to be. So people need to be more self-sufficient.
I just want to add one postscript to this, how particularly the hazardous resilience plan and our plan are moving along, which is that, so the hazard mitigation plan has its own set of priorities. So they're prioritizing what needs to be done, and I'm going to send you the most recent draft of it. And, you know, there's definitely overlap there in the things that people are worried about, particularly around flooding and extreme heat and, you know, fires and those kinds of things, forest fires. And so they're on a timetable to issue their report in the late fall, Michael, sometime like that? In 2025, I think. And we're not close to that timetable. And I don't, well, maybe we are, but I think it's worth it just that, you know, you as, you know, the ringleader, just be aware of that and from what you've read, just see how those two align. Because from the beginning, I thought that what we're looking for, maybe, I'm not sure of the timing, before or after you go to the select board, is the public information, like to go out with a draft to the public, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's a whole process.
Yeah.
And a lot of the comments in the hazard mitigation report came from that meeting at the library, where I think a bunch of us were there and went around and started pointing these things out. That's why 2/3 of this is around flooding, because everyone was recognizing flooding's a big problem, whether it's storms or sea level rise or whatever it is. I just didn't want to be, you know, not that I wake up in the night and worry about this, but it's like, okay, they'll come out with a final report that has all these things prioritized, and we're going to come out in sync with it, not quite in sync with it, and just figure out how we want to, you know, come out as a coordinated set of town-wide approaches and prioritization.
Maybe there should be some communication between the Hazard Mitigation Committee and this committee.
Yeah.
So that this committee can flag those hazards which are pointed out, which are part of what we're doing, or vice versa.
I sent this to Mike Sullivan because I thought there was so much overlap with you know, with his topic and the fact that he was hopefully gathering his subcommittee together to look at that. And I'm going to send it to you, Jeff, just so you get the picture and, possibly I'm overreacting. Not that I mean that they're off the ranch, but just so that we don't feel locked in by them when we're doing our thing and they understand.
Phil, to answer your question, the hazard mitigation plan it will hopefully be done by the end of the year, but as you said, probably sometime in the fall. We're anticipating a draft to be available probably within the next couple of months. And as far as the coordination of work goes, I did send over the hazard mitigation plan matrices to the UMD team for their comment.
Okay,
So,
that's right.
yeah, and I think one thing you yourself and Jim can do as well is talk about some of the when you go back to the hazard mitigation plan committee meetings, talk about the need for coordination with the climate resilience committee. And perhaps we could have the PAR team attend a climate resilience committee meeting in the future.
Yeah. I probably haven't been jumping up and down quite as hard about that, but I think I've been trying to make that point for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there is a lot of value in trying to make sure that there is, by having some consistency between the two plans, we'll have a very clear indication of what is a priority. If both plans are calling out a particular recommendation, then those are things that we should be making progress towards.
Sometimes simple is better. And in looking at the Texas issue in Carroll County, people said you guys have been debating since 2016 whether to have air horns. And air horns would have helped you, and they would have cost $70,000. But you never decided to do anything since 2016. Now 150 people are dead. And they then showed a nearby county that has the air horns that put them in for $70,000. And they tested every day at exactly noon. So if you hear the horn at noon, it's just noon.
Mhm.
You hear it any other time. And I remember living on a farm when I was younger on Gulf Road up by Gulf Hill. Dartmouth put the horn every day at noon, every single day. And was it a pain in the neck? No, it was, hey, it's noon, I get lunch.
Synchronize your watches?
Yeah, at that time, you say, no, who had satellite watches, right? So, but it let people know that the system works and there's a reason for the system. Now, Dartmouth had a volunteer fire department, so that's how they call people. That's why I'm saying you'd have to then see if you have a system like that, which is pretty straightforward, and if you had them at both fire stations, you might be able to cover the whole town. Then what do you want to say to citizens when you hear this horn and it's not noon?
Mhm.
What do? Can we get a partnership with a radio station where someone goes on, because everyone can have a transistor radio? But you got to assume that phones are going to be out, right? So you're not calling anyone.
But
And you
nobody
don't want
has-
you walking out if it's a lightning storm or something.
Who has a radio?
Well,
Nobody.
I do.
Well,
I
Your
get
car
for
has got one.
disasters. When
My
we-
car has one, yes.
who has a car is a bigger question than everyone with a car has got a radio.
I got the radio when the power went out for those 5, because I had power out for 4 days. I was fortunate that I had a gas fireplace.
Yeah.
But if UMD doesn't have a radio station anymore, but if there was some partnership where you could get the fire chief or someone to a radio, so if you hear this horn and it's not noon, tune to this channel, and everyone in Westport knows what this channel is. And we're gonna get you information of what the emergency is and what you should do about it.
So I grew up in Ware, Massachusetts, which is a small town in central Massachusetts, small industrial town. They had a volunteer fire department and they had the same kind of system. 12 o'clock, there was a horn. There was a sequence of horns to tell the volunteers where to go. So, but they also blew the horn at 4 o'clock. So end of shift.
End of shift.
In the factories. But you could hear that all over
Yeah.
town. And there was only one location where it
Yeah.
was. It was in the center of town. We lived about 2 miles away and you could hear it loud as.
I mean, we don't want to write the emergency response plan here, but the importance is that, as you said at the beginning, by communication, how do you make sure that you've got good communication when, you know, in problems, it's likely telephones are down, cable TV's down.
There's solar anchoring emergency radios.
Yeah.
What you've got, but in our plan, that's part of the individual resilience. So
Yeah,
have one of these on it because we don't have alternate means of
Yeah.
communication.
We also don't have the labor for radio communications. I asked when I was talking to cable, I was like, so why don't we have a radio tower? Why don't we broadcast or have like a radio channel? And they're like, that's a completely different skill set than cable.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to.
no, getting
To
our
do
own
that.
radio station.
Right,
might
they-
be hard.
right.
That's an FCC license and everything else.
So when we were discussing radios, it's like, okay, maybe signal to people, tune into this AM station, this national
Yeah,
weather report, that kind of thing. Cause at this time, we don't have the infrastructure for Westport radio.
right.
So, but I think it's going to be important for communication to have the police, the fire, maybe the same channels as the Coast Guard,
Yeah,
same channel as emergency management from Massachusetts, state police, that they can communicate together on the same
Yeah.
frequencies instead of, oh, we have ours, they have theirs, we can't
Silos.
communicate.
yeah.
Yeah, we have, it's getting out of silos and
Yeah.
having a central, if you want a central silo. But, you know, I think that's part of it. It's like, you know, what we're working on is somebody else working on it. When we first started this committee, I said, you know, we're not living in a vacuum here. This stuff is being worked on in other places. Let's see what other places are doing. But, you know, I'm very big on, how collaboration and everyone knowing and being on the same page. So it is critical in times of high stress.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about disaster, it's a time of high stress. So to do the planning and have everything in place before we get there is so
Yeah.
important.
Well, I know that the fire chief has touched a number of times about this communication thing and that hazardous mitigation. And maybe we should, depending on how things develop, invite him
Yeah.
to the next meeting and,
Yeah, he's already submitted. I don't know if he submitted a report, but we captured his oral report
right,
on fire
yeah,
as
yeah,
as a separate chapter. I'd asked him, you know, would he and have a Tiger team put a chapter on fire safety based on the fires in LA?
yeah,
And he went through it, I don't know whether it was the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. These are the things we have to do, and it's all captured in the minutes. And we need to turn that into another chapter like historic structures. It's kind of got a real narrow focus, but it's also really important focus.
But if he's the incident commander, is that what you said?
Yeah.
You know, it'd be great to have him here and talk about breaking down the silos,
Yeah.
what's the communication mechanism?
Well, if he's the incident commander, that should be happening now. So, I mean, that's part of it. And I think maybe putting the feet under the fire and saying, look, we're working on this, but this is what we need. And I love the idea, Phil, of having them come and speak, because it also helps us then give a little direction on, then what do we need to work on? Right? You're in charge of this. That's great. So this means that we can do this and this, that will help shore up and support what you're doing.
Are you saying we should light a fire under him?
well, I know
I'm so glad you picked up on it.
we're having the hazard mitigation committee is meeting next week, right?
The 15th.
Yeah, yeah, so we can also, and the fire chief is very good about attending, and so we could also
That,
raise it with him and just, just talk
my
about it.
anxiety gets higher,
I can tell that.
right?
I think everyone can
So I
tell.
speak to the everyman. That's my hope. That when I see a disaster happen somewhere else, I think about what would we do if it happened here? What if that was me here? What if I was in that circumstance? How would I help me? How would I help the people around me? And then what are people in charge doing?
Right.
And to let people know this, we're in charge of Westport. This is what we're gonna do, and this is what we've said to keep them safe and healthy.
I can't help but say, but it reminds me of living in Cambridge, where they clean the streets. And in the morning, there would be someone come around with a sound truck and tell you to move your car, to tag your code, street cleaning, and maybe that's what we need, someone to go around.
Well,
Abstract sound.
Flood coming.
We even have evacuation routes designated.
No, we need that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Anyway.
All right, because I want to see if I can get to this offshore wind. Is there other business for us? We're going to meet October 16th. We're going to get the word out, Jeff and I both, to the subcommittee chairs to meet before October 16th to react to at least the 3 chapters that UMD has done and any happen in the meantime. And then Michael and Jeff and Phil, it sounds like, are really thinking about how our report, the before hazard mitigation and the after emergency response plans all nest together. So having the fire chief come back to us in October to say, here's where we are on the emergency response plan. And he's a key player in hazard mitigation as well, right?
Yes, he is.
So he might be able to talk on both of those, but I think both you guys are also on hazard mitigation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was a emergency response plan.
Oh, there is an existing one,
And
but
it's old.
I mean,
It's
it's,
11 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the new high school in it. It hasn't,
Right.
Yeah.
it doesn't have the internet in it.
Well, I mean, really, if we were doing this in October, it almost like kind of begins the process, right, of developing what the warrants are for the next town meeting. And we should start thinking about this because a lot of stuff we do.
Yeah, that's a really good point,
Is gonna
Bill.
cost money, so
it's October's getting late.
late even,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you really need to think about that for that meeting.
right,
If you wait till December.
yeah, the wheels
it's
are
really
already
hard
down.
to get it done.
Yeah, right.
All right,
Brings
well,
up-
I think we've done our business and we can't have motion, so I'm just going to declare we're adjourned if that's all right with everyone.